Hello, my name is Daniel Carlson, and for my Discourse community project, I chose to research the Chapman learning community at BGSU. So what is Chapman? In Chapman Learning Community, we produce informal presentations on important topics such as climate change, women's rights, and more. That's not all that we do, though. While we do post on Facebook and have a weekly newsletter, we mainly participate in community service around the Bowling Green area, and yeah. So let's break down the six characteristics of this discourse community. First, common public goals. The group must have a cause that they all agree upon. In Chapman Learning Community, we are dedicated to serving the campus and local community in any way possible. Second, mechanisms for intercommunication. A real discourse community must have some sort of way by which they can communicate effectively. This is so that everyone is on the same page. In Chapman, we have many forms of communication, such as weekly on-campus meetings, which can be seen pictures in the bottom right of the screen. Also, the annual newsletter and group chats for the groups. Next, we have that they use mechanisms to provide feedback and info. A discourse community must have an effective way to communicate back and forth. And for example, they like giving feedback to one another. When we meet every Wednesday, we first talk as a group, and then we talk in smaller, more individualized groups. This is effective because a large group, it makes it so that all members hear the same message at once, and in a small group, everyone's voice is heard and addressed. Next, discourse communities use specific genre. Discourse communities utilize multiple genres. Chapman Learning Community is very similar, as we use a few as well. During our weekly meetings, we use speech. In our newsletter, we use it's a similar genre to like a newspaper article. Special Lexis. Chapman does not have much in terms of special Lexis, but we do have some terms that we use on a regular basis. Some of those being community events, service events, CSL, CLC, and there's a couple more. I'll talk about this more later. There's special Lexis. Threshold level of members. A healthy discourse community should have a consistent flow of new members joining and old members retiring. Chapman meets this requirement. Learning community allows members to participate in for only 2 years, but they are able to rejoin after their 2 years for a leadership position. We've consistently been around 50 members for the last few years, which is what we believe to be a healthy number for us. As a part of this project, I chose to interview Dr. Brett Holden. Holden is the current director of Chapman Learning Community, and he had a lot to share. My first question was about collaboration in Chapman.
Used to collaborating. I liked collaborative leadership, like we teach in Chapman, and so working with other people to collaboratively come up with solutions to challenges is something that I'm really excited about.
As a part, Holden notes that collaboration is something that he's very passionate about, and a large part of what he is teaching in the Chapman Learning Community. This collaborative factor of our discourse community is similar to the mechanisms for communication section in the discourse community Swales slideshow that we talked about in class. There, it says a discourse community has mechanisms of intercommunication among its members. So this implies that there is a level of collaboration, which is what Dr. Holden was just speaking about. As I mentioned previously, we have many forms of communication, such as our Facebook and Instagram pages, as well as our weekly newsletter. These are places where we communicate, share information, and collaborate. And there I am. So, in this clip, I ask, what makes Chapman Learning Community so special? And there's a couple clips here.
What makes Chapman Learning Community special?
It's a very special place. The fact that it takes living and learning and puts them together. The other thing that makes it really special is the type of relationship that's formed in this community, which is not normal. And they still are in touch with their fellow classmates.
When I asked Dr. Holden this question, he responds, his response was very similar to what is on the BJC Chapman website, right there, circled in red, which reads, Chapman students live in a diverse population in Cole Hall, along with other highly ambitious and motivated students who are members of other learning communities. Students work, live, and hang out together to ease the transition to college life, while also helping the community. So I think this perfectly summarizes what he had to say about how the learning community is so close-knit because of our proximity to one another. It's an experience unlike really many others. In this clip, I ask about the group's special Lexus.
Well, a mark of a great organization is that you have a history that's told through stories. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got stories. Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think he really understood what I meant by Lexus. However, he did give insight on what makes a great community and organization. In a way, our Lexile is the many years' worth of stories that we have to share. This is sourced from the special Lexus section of the Discourse Community Swales slideshow, where it reads, how certain things will be puzzling to outsides, they won't understand. Many of our stories would only be understood completely and in their entirety by members of the Chapman Learning Community. Here's an example of the close relationship that members, past and present, have with the Chapman Learning Community. This is a post about a recent bowling trip that Chapman on the Chapman Facebook page, and in the comments there are a few Chapman members who remembered when they went to the Chapman bowling event in the year 2000. They were sharing pictures and reminiscing about their time in Chapman. These former students were very active, enthusiastic, and they still are, and show that how stories can bond friends for a lifetime. Here, Holden tells a story of a student who used what they learned in Chapman to succeed in academics and beyond.
I remember, let me tell you a story. This is an example of a Chapman story which really had a major, profound impact on me. The experience was our first year in Chapman, and it was at Harshman. And we were looking for evidence that what we were doing was having a phenomenal impact. So I walk into the Harshman lobby and I hear a piece of classical music coming from one of the lounges on the first floor of Harshman. And it was beautiful. I walked in and I had a seat, and it was a student of ours by the name of Marcos Popovich, who would go on to become president of undergraduate student government, and then would go to law school and be working nonprofits in Chicago that they have. And so he was having a particularly difficult time with this piece of music, and he kept getting to the same spot and messing up and getting really frustrated with himself. And so it all worked fine until he kept failing over and over and over and over. And then what he did was he isolated that piece and played it specifically. And he finally got through it. And then he successfully got through it 2 or 3 times. And then he went back to the beginning of the piece and he played it all the way through flawlessly. And when he was done, he put the book and he stood up and he said, well, how long have you been sitting there? And I said, long enough. And he said, well, I'm struggling with this essay and I need to see you. You're going to be around this afternoon? I said, of course I'm going to be around. I'll see you at 1:30 in my office. And he came in. He was really struggling with his writing at the time, and he said to me, I can't do this. I'm like, what do you mean you can't do it? Well, it's complicated. I'm working on this argument for this class, and I'm having trouble sort of forming this argument in here, and I keep getting to this section of the paper, and I keep getting frustrated, keep showing. Then I was able to refer to the music, and I said, I just sat and watched you deal with the same frustration with a piece of music that you're having with this essay. I want you to take this paper back, and I want you to take it to your room, and I want you to do the same thing that you did with that piece of music to this essay. I want you to isolate the part that's causing the most problem. I want you to focus on that. And then when you get that section of the paper written, I want you to go back to the beginning, and I want you to go all the way from the intro to the conclusion and make sure that it's all smooth. And so he came back to me later on, and I didn't even have him in class. He came back to me with his A on his paper, and he rocketed through the portfolio assessment that semester. So
this student learned from their time in Chapman. He says that at the beginning of the story, when introducing the student, that he went on to law school and have success in other aspects of life after Chapman and BGSU. This is related to the BGSU Chapman website, which reads, the leadership skills Chapman students gain as members of the community have been praised by employers and agencies for over 2 decades and are often the reason our members are accepted as interns or hired professionally following graduation. Next, I ask about the member threshold of Chapman and what Dr. Holden has planned for the future growth of Chapman.
specifically are you talking about?
Any plans to grow in size?
Slowly. I have to have the resources in order to do this intentionally and to do it. And so when you build a bridge, you best make sure that the bedrock that you're placing that bridge's supports upon is strong and unfractured. And so
Dr. Holden's response to this was parallel with the threshold level of members section in the Discourse Community Swales slideshow that we saw in class. He says that the number of members that we have now is a comfortable number for the community, otherwise known to Swales as a threshold. A comfortable number for the community is a threshold. Dr. Holden says that he would love to expand the reach, but he must build a strong foundation first before growing out of control, which could happen if you don't build a strong foundation. But that is all. Thanks for watching, listening, and that was my Discourse Community project on the Chapman Learning Community at BGSU.